Did I just say we're going to start a new course? You know what? I think I've changed my mind. I'd much rather go on a holiday. What about you? And I think I actually want to fly to Hawaii. So let's see. Munich, Honolulu. That goes with United and with American Airlines. And both are 1,200 euros, but I've got this loyalty card which lets me collect bonus points on a United flight. So, sure thing. I'll just go ahead and book this one. United it is. So what just happened here is called consumer lock-in. United has locked me in terms of my purchasing decisions, because I'm now much more inclined to fly with United based on the benefits that I receive as a member of their loyalty scheme. Locking in consumers can help your business maintain its consumer base. But why is it so important to keep your old consumers when you could just as well concentrate on acquiring new ones? I'm going to show you in the next couple of slides. Why is holding on to your consumers an important thing? Why do you want to prevent your consumers from switching? Well, quite simply put, keeping your old consumers is better than gaining new ones, because consumers that stay with you for a long time are profitable, whereas getting new consumers is not necessarily profitable immediately. So let me give you a couple of examples here. So looking at the annual profits per consumer after getting the consumer, after acquiring the consumer, let me give you three examples of industries. So this is in US dollars. The first one is the market for car insurance. And what we basically see here is that in the early years, in the first 2 years, a car insurer will not make profits on the consumers that they acquire. Only if a consumer stays with them for more than 2 years, so in years 3, 4, and 5, will profits actually become positive, and they will actually grow over time. Similarly, thinking of the credit card market, in the credit card market, what you see very significantly or very often is situations where you get the first year interest-free, so or special offers to join a credit card network and so on. So that means that credit card providers often lose money in the first year of a consumer, and then only over time will they start making positive profits later. So we can compare this to the wholesale market. In the wholesale market, you basically make profits straight away from your consumers. But even there, the longer you are with a consumer, the longer a consumer stays with you, the more profitable he becomes for you. And that's an important issue, of course, and that also should teach us that what is important is not necessarily just the ways of getting consumers, but also the techniques, the possibilities of keeping consumers for a longer period of time. So let's just think of another example here. This is a phone market, and specifically the German mobile telephony market. So if you think of the German mobile telephony market and the phenomenon of churn, churn is simply consumers leaving firms, right? So you have consumers that have signed up for your network, but at some point they decide to switch providers. And what is interesting is that looking at the German market, there was an increase in 10 years between 1999 and 2009, was an increase of almost 1% to 2.3% in consumer churn. So that means that about 2.3% of your consumers are going to switch to another provider every quarter, right? And so what's important is that you want to keep this number as low as possible. And so just to give you a good overview of what this market actually looks like, T-Mobile and Vodafone, so the two largest providers in this market, will actually have the highest churn rates, whereas E-Plus and O2 Germany, the two smaller players in this market, will be the ones that have a lower churn rate. So that, of course, what that might mean is that over time, the advantage of T-Mobile and Vodafone in terms of market share and so on is maybe going to erode, and so that O2 and E+ might catch up eventually. So we have some rough idea of what switching costs can do to a market, what they can, that they can make consumers more profitable as we keep on holding on to them. But what exactly are switching costs? What are these switching costs that we've been talking about? So just as an example, and let's take the example that we started out with, let's take airlines. What is the cause of switching costs in airlines? Well, as I said, it's the frequent flyer program that lets you collect miles, and from those miles you get benefits. And if you started switching, if you started splitting up your miles over different providers, over different airlines, then this of course would mean that your benefits are going to decrease. Right? So that's why we're choosing United over American, not because United is in any way better or worse than American, but because we are already locked in to this network. Let's take some other examples here. What about operating systems? So I'm talking about the Windows, even smartphone operating systems. I'm talking about iOS, Linux, and so on. So what could prevent consumers, what could prevent users from switching their operating system? Well, first of all, I've invested in software. I bought software that I can use on this operating system, and I've bought hardware that's compatible with the operating system. So that's something that's going to keep me from switching my operating system. Training of employees. If you're in a large company and this large company has been using Windows or iOS or Linux for a long time, they just know how this works. They know how the operating system works. They know the shortcuts and so on and so forth, which means that if I switched operating systems, I would have to retrain all my users, all my employees, to actually go for and learn and be as proficient in using the new operating system as they were in the old one. So these are, of course, also switching costs. People tend to stick with the same printer or with the same brand of printer for also quite a few years. And what's the reason for switching costs there? Well, it's the toner cartridges, because you basically have invested in a printer, and that printer will basically take a single cartridge, a single type of cartridge only, which means that the investment in a printer, if you wanted to switch cartridges, is also something that would be lost. Therefore, you're likely to stick to a printer-cartridge combination for quite some period of time. And finally, let's get back to the telephone network. What's going to keep you from switching telephone providers? Well, number of things. I mean, first of all, there's administrative costs. Typically, every time you switch to a new provider, there's an administrative fee that you have to pay. There's basically time that you have to spend setting up a new account and so on. Something that was more common in previous years, but it's now pretty much been eradicated, eliminated, is number portability. So if if you've been choosing, let's say, a telephone number, if you've moved a telephone number over a couple of years, some years ago, then number portability was a real issue, because you would lose your telephone number if you switched providers. So this is basically going to get us to the next in-video quiz. So just have a look and see what you think. So we've seen now why maintaining your consumer base is really quite important, and that so-called switching costs can prevent consumers from switching from one supplier to another. In the next video then, we'll take a closer look at the different types of switching costs and what they do. Stay tuned.